beyond me.
Yeah. Well, I have started the show. This is what we are currently calling the CTCW Wednesday night. We are going to have we're going to be doing this every week. The whole point behind this particular, well, no, behind having the show is to try and drum up interest in changing times, changing worlds online. Because this year the conference is going to be virtual, and we're hoping that if we record a bunch of wonderful shows and show people how cool we are, put them on YouTube, that people will come to the virtual one by giving people a hint of what we do on Changing Times, Changing Worlds. We are today our first show as such. Actually, we had one last week with Coyote Sky Woman, which we will put up as soon as I know how to do that. But for now, we are going to, what is it called? Tonight we are speaking to Jane Sibley, the other founder of Changing Times, Changing Worlds. And we're going to be talking about Scandinavian folk magic. Another night, I hope we're going to be doing runes, but I want to get better at the graphics before then. And I want to be able to get Jane so that she can actually hold up runes and do things like that so we can see them before we move that. Jane is joining us tonight by phone because that's all we seem to be able to manage tonight. I hope everybody can hear. Jane, I would like you to say something about yourself, or say something about Changing Times, Changing Worlds.
Okay. Well, it was pretty obvious that we needed to have some sort of a conference like this in New England area, because there just wasn't anything. There were other ones that had sort of died, and the interest was there. Now, my specialty is Scandinavia, but we have a lot of people with other talents, other interests, other areas of expertise, and this gives a chance for us to share and compare, etc. Over.
Okay. I just want a quick check here. See if that. I think everybody is hearing that. Can you wave if you can see if you heard Jane on the phone? All right. So we have a approximate ability to function.
I see no pictures of anybody.
We'll work it out. Somehow we will drag you kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I know I'm having a hard enough time with it. So let's go back to the 14th century or earlier and talk about folk magic. I think one of the points behind Changing Times, Changing Worlds is that magic works, and it's awfully silly to pretend it doesn't. Oddly enough, in the modern world, a lot of people still don't believe in herbalism. Well, still, in what they call the modern period is anything after the 1600s. So herbalism was basically what medicine was until the 20th century. But a lot of 21st century people just assume if it's an herb, it's just old wives' tales and doesn't work. I use a great deal of herbalism because it works in many. The ones I've found and use a lot work better for me than commercial medicine. So I know that you have studied a lot of, would you want to talk about any of the Scandinavian herbs that were popular and can be used usefully in the modern world?
Well, there's a whole lot. And then when the Christian, particularly the Benedictine monks, came north and established monasteries, plant herbal gardens. But the use of herbs in herbal medicine was very widespread, and of course, magic also with it. For example, if you are going out to gather herbs, you would ask the first plant you saw for permission, and you maybe take a leaf, and then you go on, and you maybe to the next one, but you always ask permission, and you always thank. You only took what you needed. Like there's one herb called purple gentian, and which is very bitter, but it was called root or sweet root because you gave it a very nice complimentary name so that it would want to heal. And but other things, for example, they knew about bog iron. So people who had like hemorrhage problems needed iron. You drink bog water. So it's amazing how widely herbal and natural medicine was used in period. And this goes back into saga times, if not before. And they just didn't have like our modern pills and stuff like that. Over.
That's true. I'm going to mention, for the benefit of anybody who is watching this later on YouTube or listening, a couple of my favorites, which are plantain, which was called White Man's Footprints by the Native Americans because it came over with them because they couldn't live without it. Plantain is the first herb I teach most children because it is so useful. It's almost everywhere that people disturb the soil, and it's got a wide, look up plantain, Plantain, and it's a wide ribbed.
Plantago major, which is the wide leaf, and Plantago lanceolata, which is the narrow leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you rub it on a bug bite or a bee sting, it makes the itch or the sting go away. This just blows people away because it works so fast. And they say, whoa, it worked. Because you don't expect I don't know, if it came out of a little applicator that you'd bought at the store, you probably wouldn't be surprised. But
I'm trying to enter the password for the thing now. Password is 438610.
yeah, I'm looking. For password is 438610. Yeah, you're right.
38.
Anyway, and that's going to.
See if I can make that. And then I'm going to join meeting.
That's only useful for.
Meeting password was incorrect.
Well, try CTCW 2020. And mentioning for anybody who might be watching this on YouTube, that will only work for live meetings.
2020. Join meeting. Enter meeting password. That password was incorrect.
Okay, why don't you give up on that? If we can hear you, let's just keep talking.
There's another password that I have here. I'm going to try.
Okay.
2HCW.
Yes, let us just go on with what we've got.
Okay.
Yes, anyway. So they did herbalism. They did, but they also did energy work. One of the things that the Anglo-Saxons did, and they were, I think, related cultures, is they sang and spoke. As you referred to, speaking to the herbs, they sang to the herbs when they were processing them, collecting them, and using them. There is a fairly famous group of herbs that has a 9 herbs chant, which they guess may be used for many purposes, including hemorrhoids, but the instructions on it say sing for the plant and sing into all the body orifices. And if they are going to be, if you're treating hemorrhoids, I'm just picturing somebody singing a song into the butt. It's I don't know if you have anything like that in Norse, but in energy
Really,
work.
what you did was you had beeswax, and you melted that, and you put in white willow bark and a few other things, and you formed it into a suppository up the back end.
Okay, but can we? I'd just like to move over into more magical things. As I said, I'd like to hold off on the runes, at least anything more than generally, so we can do a whole show on it.
When we can get visuals.
Yes, exactly. But I know that the Anglo-Saxons would write runes on a plate and then wash them off with ale and then give the patient the ale, which is going to do nothing except other than give them ale. It's going to give them the energy from the runes to heal them.
I don't remember any of that in Norse practice.
Ah, well.
But then the Anglo-Saxons got a lot of stuff from down south.
That's okay. I'm trying to interview you. Come on, tell me something cool that they did up in the north.
Okay. One herb that was very, very important was angelica, which was called kvan. And it's Angelica archangelica or Angelica officinalis. And in medieval times, it was so valuable that everybody who was a healer had to plant it, and it was a death penalty if you stole somebody's angelica. And it was considered an agent against many things, including gout, eye ailments, rickets, poor blood flow, heartburn, etc., etc. The tea was good against psoriasis and skin rashes. And incidentally, yes, they did treat a psoriasis and eczema with pine tar or birch tar. They'd smear on the lesions, like the Geckerman tar treatment, which was used relatively recently. And so that was one of the primary herbs that you used in healing. Again, barley was used. That's called big. And you need barley, crushed barley into a dough and with spit. And that was placed on the skin to pull out infection, or also to remove scabies. And so you had an amazing variety of treatments. They did not know about the endocrine system. So anything there was, oh, well. Did you know that the Norse chewed gum? The gum was generally birch or fir tar. That would be boiled until it was like a resin. And yes, they chewed gum, and this is how they would keep their mouths clean. And also, you know, that removes bits of stuff between the teeth. And if somebody got a toothache, there was a toothache tree, which was out in the middle of nowhere. Everybody knew where the toothache tree is, but you didn't want to cut the tree down or harvest any wood from it because you'd get every toothache stored in it. So what you would do would be you'd take a splinter of wood, usually from rowan, and you'd poke that in the tooth. And then you would transfer the magic of the transfer to the toothache tree and wedge that into the bark of the tree. And they did have temporary fillings back in those days, which would be like a white willow in beeswax, and you'd cram that into the cavity. And, you know, eventually, you know, the tooth would probably have to come out. And that meant a trip to the smith. So you'd lay across, you'd have the person's head on the handle, and the smith would come with the tongs, and you get your patient drunk, and so the patient wouldn't care, and tooth would get hauled out, and then you have a wad of like linen some of the old cartoon strips where, like Porky Pig or somebody had a toothache, with the strip of cloth tying the mouth shut. And this would keep the mouth shut until the gum was healed. And that way you would not get something called dry socket. Over.
Well, I can see that. Toothaches are powerful. What we did for the last extraction in our house was to make a plantain and comfrey poultice that she just chewed down on until it healed it. Comfrey is widely used for wound healing. It is so effective that you have to be very careful to make sure that the wound is clean first, because it will clean over it. It'll heal over with, if there's any infection left inside, that would not be good. So you have to make sure it's well cleaned. And yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just put a chin on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was going to do some of the spells that we saw, and I'm just trying to find a good one.
Old Norse didn't have any good spells for computers.
And like, here's one. Now, it's amazing how many spells that we have documented were written down in Christian times. So you would have, instead of Freya or Thor, you would have Maria or Mary or Jesus. And many times Mary was the one that was healing Jesus. And there was a counting down one. Mosot is depression. So I'm going to read this in the Norwegian and then the translation. Gaken sled 654 ash. Med samme ord som det 31. går ut, sled 31. That's go away, completely away, 654. AAH, which would probably be Heliga on, the sacred spirit, with the same words as the three first ones, go away, completely away, 3, 2, 1. And this is read 3 times in 3 pieces. And each time afterwards you would say a paternoster. So you have the combining of Christian with the pagan.
That happened with the Old English too.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see, and also they're very good at specifying, if something, I'm cursing this that creeps, that swims, that flies, that crawls, that yada yada, any way of transportation, they would nail it. And let's see now. Let me find another good one.
I'm going to take the moment to mention that that's very typical of many types of magic, because magic is really specific. Somehow the universe loves to take what you request and give it to you exactly what you asked for, not what you wanted. And so being very specific is quite common in most of the magic I've encountered. Almost every culture that I've hit. Yes, once your mat gives a spell, it doesn't try to blanket. There wasn't a lot of, I want to bring peace to the world. It was like, no, I want to bring peace to my household. Or but it was they'd get very, very specific, because if you're not specific, like that poor woman who wanted a new boyfriend who she actually did remember the gender, and she wanted him to be happy and not be morose and redhead, and then the next week an Irish setter that totally loved her. And so she got an Irish setter that was always happy and totally loved her and had beautiful red hair, but she'd forgotten to specify the species. I don't know, I get more good stories out of screwed up love spells. But
I've got another neat one here. Gout. Gout was a biggie back then. And you had sort of an epic spell, which translated, Jesus went to the beach. There he met out on the sand. Where are you going, you nasty fellow? I'm going to, and lead to destination, to suck the blood and break the bones. I shall turn you around to the one who sent you. You shall go through the seas be cleaned, till the rivers be washed, till the fires be burned by these three names. And in Norwegian, it's Jesus lakker det sette sammen, let me say i sammen. Hvor skal det hengikk du leder deg? Jeg vil til med medelhjem, suge blod og bryte ben. Jeg skal deg tilbakevende til den som deg sende. Du skal gjennom havet renne, gjennom elven rinde, du skal gjennom ilden brenne i disse tre navn. And a good, and you pronounce this, you got to put some real oomph in it because there's a great deal of theater, a lot of theater in the healing. And so if you really bite into it and you really curse the gout or whatever, then it's amazing how the patient responds. Over.
Well, yeah, this is, of course, the essence of a great deal of modern medicine and the concept of placebo and the lesser spoken of concept of nocebo, which is why doctors will not be very specific if the news is bad, because they know that if it comes from a position of authority, your body may just take their word for it. So they're never going to tell you, no, I know, you've only got 2 months to go. Because then your subconscious will hear it and say, well, the doctor says it must be true. So they're very careful.
And also there's the theater in modern medicine. You've got the I Love Me wall with all the diplomas. You've got the white jacket, the stethoscope around the neck, even though you're not going to use it. There's so much theater in modern medicine. One of the big things back in the old days also was hemorrhage. Say if somebody got hit with an axe or like a menstruation that was going crazy, so you would have so still the blood as Jesus stood as Satan stood at the Jordan River when Christ let himself be baptized. So you would recite that to still the blood. And there were people who were called blood stoppers that sometimes, if they even knew the name of the person and focused on them, could stop the hemorrhaging. And you find this in Finnish as well as in Scandinavian lore. Over.
You find that in the early modern world too. There were blood stoppers, and they would usually have to send them a bit of cloth dipped in the blood. But they would send them off, somebody get on a horse and go off to the blood stopper, and they'd go disappear into their house, and then the person would go back and the bleeding had stopped at the time when they were doing it. Even to this day, I've heard of, but lost track of her address, wart wishers. Warts get people who can wish warts away, which I think is kind of interesting. Warts are viral. And I think that viruses are more responsive to human magical energy, which who knows what effects that may be, how that may be skewing who happens to catch the COVID and who doesn't, because that's viral. And I think anything viral is going to respond better to human enemy energy manipulation. We have power that frequently we don't realize that we have. I want to know, are there charms or spells or traditions that you have taken from the historic record or was passed down through your family that you use because they work now?
Well, when I do a Norse working, it's an energy working.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, there's been people who've wanted to conceive. And so we call the spirit of the child to the couple. And, you've been in a Norse working, you know what it looks like.
Yes.
And so and work on various things like, say, for example, skeletal or, say, even psychological. It's what is needed. Over.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we should talk a little bit more. Now, we're not going to be able to do a Norse working. We've done several Norse workings at Changing Times, Changing Worlds, and at many other events. Because if you have the opportunity to do something that will make somebody who is ill better, then you grab it. But I want to describe it a little bit because we're not going to be able to do it this year because we haven't figured out how to do that virtually.
We can't.
But I think that you have described it in the past. People sit in a big circle. Now the chairs, everybody doesn't stay in the same chairs. There's a small altar in the center, and Jane has described this before as a cyclotron, as people each draw up energy, as many energy workers, magic workers know how to do, is you pull up energy and you direct it to where you want it. You do this with Reiki, you do this with many kinds of energy work, just the laying on of hands. But in the Norse working, the practitioners all sit in a circle and they pass the energy around, everybody adding a little as it goes by, and it continues going by and going around and around and around till it gets huge and then is directed at the recipients of the healing energy. I know that when Jane has done fertility workings, the people who do not want fertility are step aside because it has too many little babies have been called in when Jane is calling for fertility. and you want it where you want it and not where you don't want it. But is that a good description of it?
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to know what a cyclotron is, but I think that was a good energy. Everybody thinks that's a good, if they understood what I was saying, give me a nod. It's a pity that Jane can't see you. Good.
I can't see it. The screen is totally black though.
I know it is, but we'll get you on and so that you'll be able to do classes at the virtual Changing Times.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that is an energy work. That one is one that she got through her family. Another one, talk them about the fog, because this is something I think people could practice.
Oh, wishing the fog. That was when we were little, and Mom would say, "Let's wish the fog." And so what you do is you'd focus out. And, if you're on a boat, you want to wish the fog away. So you focus on the little droplets of water in the air, and you just sort of form like a very, very narrow arrow with like a one molecule point, and then widen, and you just sort of push it aside. And by George, it works. Over.
Yes, it does. What my kids have done something similar with when large storms, the hurricane season, summer storms, head for Penzic, which is a big SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism event, where you have 10,000 to 15,000 people living in tents, and sometimes storms come by like hurricane force winds or potential for tornadoes, and we don't want that in our tent city.
Barely aside, and then it closes up behind you.
And that's exactly what the weather workers at Penzic do. And now that we have technology, I can watch on my cell phone and watch the weather satellite images of this red mass of storm coming at Slippery Rock and splitting and going around it. It's like, yes, watch us do our, on the other hand, since intelligence is not spread equally across it, my daughter once ran into somebody who said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do a ceremony. We're going to call down the wild hunt." She said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, the wild hunt. It's this Celtic wisdom totem." Well, she whacked his head against a tree a few times. And
the wild hunt was also called Asgard's Ride or Asgard's Ride, and that was where Lod on the continent Frigg would lead the souls of the damned over and the dead. And those are those big storms in November. You didn't want to be anywhere near those. You had to take very particular protection against those. Over.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, but she explained to him that that was not a good thing to try. Just because we can does not mean we may, and just because we may does not mean we should. That is a word of wisdom from Lauren. Oh dear, brilliant woman from down in the Maryland area. But yeah, that's a important thing, and this is, of course, why we have changing times and other instruction, is so that you can teach people humans can do this. This is just something we do. And perhaps part of the reason that they try and pretend it doesn't work is because they don't want people doing it. Because if people are doing it, another example was there was a drought going on in Maine, and apparently 4 or 5 different covens up in Maine decided that they were going to call in rain. And the next weekend there was 6 foot of flooding in Portland. So, because, you know, especially since they're all secret, they don't know about each other, and so you can't coordinate the effort. But yeah, this works. Therefore, we should learn how to do it. Did they do anything of this variety of dowsing? That's another thing that is very commonly used magical practice in the modern world.
Oh yeah. For example, if you're trying to find something, you might have something that's similar to it, and on like a linen was the preferred string that you would use, and for a pendulum dowsing. I'm not sure about the Y stick, so they may have used that for finding water. I wonder if we have any questions from out there.
I was just thinking the same thing. Okay, does anybody have a question they would like to ask Jane? If you give me a flag, I will open your mic. I'm getting a no. We got one person who's listening in their car, so we're not going to do that. So, okay.
Well, keep your hands on the steering wheel.
No questions at the moment. Maybe we can say something else inflammatory and get a question out of them. But yeah, other things that you do commonly, because I know that I do dowsing at least once a day. I do healing at least once a day. And I have found that here's something that I'll ask your concept on, because I know you do healing.
Okay.
I use the Runewalder healing, which can stop a migraine in its tracks. Usually takes about 10 minutes. Unfortunately, my sister started calling me and she'd say, "I've got a migraine coming on. Could you do whatever that thing is that you do?" And after about half a dozen times, it stopped working. And I think that may be because the universe wants us to take care of ourselves, and maybe didn't want her to keep eating whatever it was that triggered migraines, but to learn.
Also, she may have gotten inured to it, and it no longer works, because sometimes it's like taking an antibiotic or something, that they have to take higher and higher doses for things to work.
Magic works like that too?
Yeah. So you'd have to back off and then pick some other way for doing the and then with migraines, you've got different types of migraines. And sometimes people can feel the aura coming on. And they just know that they're going to have it. And they have some ways of doing it, but or you can develop your own magical things. But again, if you use the same thing again and again and again, pretty soon the body gets to ignore that. Over.
Well, I knew that did it physically, but I didn't know that it worked with magic.
It can.
Okay. Did any other bits of wisdom imparted by your grandmother or?
Oh, there's all sorts of stuff, including veterinary magic, because a lot of people, they will think about humans, but they won't think about critters.
Okay.
And a lot you adapt it to the
Thank you.
body weight, whatever, of the critter. Now, cats and dogs, there wasn't that much there. You wanted to, you did most of your magic and whatever with your large animals, the cows, the horses, the goats, the sheep. And so, for example, one thing was going to 3 district churchyards, take a bit of earth from each graveyard, and for each handful that you take, you have to put something there. You cannot just steal. You have to put more earth there or a coin. And then the earth that you take, you put on what you own, and you give some to the animals, and then put some on the fire so that the animal will heal. But you see, you never took something, and particularly from a graveyard, without leaving something. I'm trying to find, a good one for cattle. Let's see now. Calves not striving, poor lactation, wrenched or sprained legs. If an animal milked blood, that was a hard one. Or if you had an infection in an udder, you would try to get that all out, and you might have to spend all night working on that. Sharp object in a cow's rumen. There was a way of cutting into the side of the cow and feeling around for it, but you could also enchant it, whether it worked or not. You didn't have as much problem with sharp objects in the cow's rumen in the old days, but nowadays they can pick up nails and things. Evil eye, you wanted to protect your animals against evil eye, which is called avin, and so you would curse it. I shall name you evil eye, and all devilishness to its owner shall be sent back. So you had a ricochet spell. Through his teeth and roots of his tongue, through the liver and roots of the lungs, through the heart roots, there shall you dwell, and not in my home. So you'd name somebody like Sven Janssen. Hers and animals shall suffer no harm than an earth-fast stone. As soon as this is accomplished, there shall be healing. Each could name in the 3 names. It would be good Father, Son, and Helion, which is God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But you would, again, it's a ricochet spell. I preserve my cow from evil and ill-intentioned people. It shall fly against Scotch pines and fields, and straight through the liver and lungs of the one who has stolen and cursed my cow. That's a spell from 1822 from Oslo in Norway. Another type of magic that was against animals was called shot. You probably heard of fin shot or earth shot.
We usually do elf shot.
Is a what?
We're more used to elf shot.
Yeah, a gun is a type of magic which requires the use of a tool. And in the shot, east to the west, which is why in the conversion times you would have the temple to the Christian gods. In the east, you would have Jesus in the center, Maria on one side, and then a defender, or Santa Michael, one of them on one side. And then in the north, you always had Thor in the center, because the one who threw the thunderbolt was the primary god. And then you could have one on either side, possibly Frey. If you were at the seashore, it could be Njord. But anyway, but you would have, it was believed that somebody who shot gun, like a shot, would be to the north side, and they have a little tiny bow, like an archer's bow, and the arrow was usually like in the tendons of some large animal cows. That when you slaughtered them, sometimes there's calcifications that look like little tiny arrows or darts, and those would be kept by the magician somebody who wanted to do cursing. And so that would be sort of shot at the animals that were to be cursed. But the defense was you had a useless animal to the north side, which might get hit first. Now, there was something called the Gagnflue, or the magic fly. Fly in the sense it's like an insect. There's an insect called a warble fly, which is ovipositor, will deposit eggs subcutaneously on animals, cows and horses particularly. And so you get gangrene there. And so there was spells. And this would be the farmer and the practitioner would be reciting. And you'd have a drill, a shabor, and so they would drill into where the bubble was, and you say, egg bor, I'm drilling. And then the farmer saying, what are you drilling for? Egg bor for school i Johnson's ku. I'm drilling for this shot in Johnson's cow. And then usually the thing pierces the bubble at that point, and you could put pine tar in it or some healing herb to heal the gangrene. But there was all sorts of things, for wrenched legs and stuff like that. But veterinary was very important, and a lot of people in Norse tradition just ignore it completely. Over.
Okay. It's like so people getting a idea of what it's like. Of course, when Jane is in front of a class by herself, you don't get the overs and the prompting. She goes to her own notebooks for prompting. But
it was funny when we would be on our boat back to some island in Sweden, and my father was a radio ham, but we had single sideband. So through the American Radio Relay League, my dad was able to call in and connect to my grandmother in Chester, Connecticut. And so we'd be back and forth, and my grandmother loved to say, over. Let's see. There's another wonderful story about when you were in college and you did exchange student work over in Norway, I think it was. And they wanted you to stay there as a healing woman? Yeah.
That's a great story.
I was in grad school at the University of Oslo, and I was taking a course in cultural anthropology and field techniques in folklore collection. And there was a store, the equivalent of a 7-Eleven, out near Akershus Castle. And so the professor said for me to go in there, and he said to ask what to ask for, but I knew what to ask for, and it wasn't what he said. And the little old lady behind the counter said, are you going to set up healing here, set up a practice here? Our wise woman has died, we have nobody. And I went, heap. And I had explained that I was an American student, and I was only here for the year. But their wise woman had died, and and you see, I'd grown up with a lot of the techniques like measuring, moaning is called, and so you measure from like fingertips across the back, over the atlas vertebra to the fingertips on the outspread other side, and then across the front. There was also measuring from the isa, which is the top of the head, around the periphery of the human being, all the fingers. In the case of a guy, you also get that little tool too. And so that you have a person's measure. So if somebody was so sick that they couldn't be manipulated, you use that for some of the magical treatments to ward off disease or to treat things. And so, you know, I knew what to do, but the thing is I had to explain to the poor old lady and she was crushed. But, you know, hey, and now in these internet times, the knowledge is just going away.
Well, you do, it is nice. I have a feeling that throughout history, when a lot of knowledge was passed around from one person to another, if you didn't run into a certain injury or a certain ailment, then you'd stop thinking about it and you didn't use it and you didn't pass that down, and then somebody else is going to have to rediscover it because you didn't pass that on to your apprentices and they didn't pass it on to theirs. So this is just life and now we have books and we don't lose as much.
Modern times, we've got the new age, and when we get into the runes class, you know, there's going to be a lot there. But anyway, and it's creative, but it's not historical, and it's not reflective of what was done in the boonies. Like, it was sort of like from Simmer on the Roof, Lord, keep the Tsar far away from us. The peasantry didn't want to have the city folk, the conditioned or the conditioned or polished people, dealing with us. And they didn't want to deal with us because they thought we were filthy farmers. So, you know, there was a much more of a separation. But they did with the medicine, or the learned medicine, the doctors, who always wanted a fee. Whereas out in the boonies, if you needed a treatment, you know, a dead chicken would work, or, you know, help with the farm or something like that. It was a much more of a barter system. It wasn't the coin, and it was also with the goodwill. Over.
Now, well, we're seeing that a lot as we're trying to rework the modern medical system, and you know, a lot of things in every culture. If you don't understand the other person's culture, you don't understand it. The rich do not understand the poor, and the poor do not understand the rich. We think differently because we have different patterns that we've had to live with. So,
like the spirits that you worked with, you would have the Norns, but it wasn't three Norns like in Snorri, but it was the lowercase n Norn, which was a birthing spirit, and that could be called for animal or people. And they were all over the place. You had the Betir, which is like local spirits, almost like gnomes. But as far as gods went, Thor, of course, everybody knew about Thor. Wherever there was thunder and lightning, everybody knew about Thor. And then Freya was the natural earth and sex and things like that. And for the dealings of humans, Tyr, 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 but his name is Cognate. Cognate was used in Dios and Deus, and he was the warrior god. But then in the 1200s or so, Snorri invented an awful lot that went into what we call Norse folklore or Norse mythology, but is not reflective of what was going on in the boonies. Like out in the boonies, until like Victorian times, they never even heard of Odin, and they never heard of Loki and all of that. And so, you know, it was just, they're very rural, almost from valley to valley, things would be different. Over.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of all the wonderful things that you have told me in the past, which are so much fun. Again, I'm going to see, is there anybody out there who would like, has any questions? No, not at this point. Okay. Because we're 5 minutes from the end of the episode. And please, if you're listening, whether later on the taped version or on recorded version or now, if you have any subject that you would very much like to know more about, please let us know, because I will tell you from the people I know and from myself, there is nothing that is more motivating for a speaker than knowing that somebody really, really wants to hear what it is they're saying. If you know that somebody really wants to hear about something, then you're going to say, oh, I didn't think anybody would know that. And you'll do it. So I will seek out, you let us know what you want to hear about, and I will go and find somebody who can talk about it.
Yeah, for example, tarot. There are people that are tarot experts and palmists, divination. We haven't even touched on that. And of course, there are so many traditions out there, and this is a wonderful format for people to contrast and compare and say, oh, that is similar to XYZ, or gee, the Abyssinians didn't do it that way. And did you see about the liver divination in Mesopotamia? Yeah, I love it. Over.
Yeah, we have actually had somebody in another group I'm in, the Society for Creative Anachronism. I'm in in the Soothsayers Guild. The diviners get together, and there's a discussion of whether we want to let anybody promote and talk about liver divination. Apparently it's too gross for some people. So.
And we used to have Sooth You, and
yeah.
So
we're going to do that again. We're talking about doing that one virtually, since we're all learning this new magic. Can you only imagine what people 100 years ago would have thought about these long distance meetings? But humans have a great deal of ability. The first thing you want to teach children, and we can't do an hour on it, but we might be able to do an hour on boarding. I was going to say is centering and grounding. And we do talk about that, and we do that at every Changing Times, Changing Worlds. But you can't spend an hour on it because it's a basic thing, but you should spend time practicing it. And warding might be something we could putting up magical protections is something we could spend an hour doing. Because there's so many different ways of doing it. And so there are...
Yeah, and warding for specific things, like, for example, in the Norse, warding against the evil eye or the evil tongue. There were various things that you did. Over.
Well, the Norse were very big on cursing. And they cursed beautifully or effectively.
Oh, yeah.
The Irish were very big on that too, and that may have been some of the interaction they had with it. But we are now coming up to the end of the show, and so I want to thank Jane, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch, and hope that you will let us know if there's some other topic you'd like to see us do. And tell your friends, because it would be really cool, since it's going to be cheaper this year. I think it's $25 for the entire
It's 9 o'clock.
week. So it's time for us to get off. Thank you all.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, please email us and let us know, and we'll try to answer it. Over.
Yep. And so that's the end of the show. And I'm going to turn everybody's mic on so we can say hi to each other. Okay, is everybody, well, okay, I've tried to unmute you. Maybe you've muted yourself, but
there we go.
You want to say hi? Say hi, Bob. Say hi, Diane.
Hi.
Hi, Bob.
Hello.
Hi, Tipicon.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Tipicon, your face is very, very bright.
That's because I've got this light on it right beside I'm on my computer. I don't
It's
have a
really better
laptop.
without it.
I don't use my, but I can't use my keyboard. I can't see it. You
Uh,
want to know how silly this is? The other day I got up and the screen was too bright. I had to turn the light on to the keyboard because I had to be able, it needed more light to see the keyboard so I could use the buttons on it to make the screen not be so bright. I have
yeah, and I thought you were squinting because it was so bright up here.
it probably is, but I have a very, very narrow area of comfort with the amount of light I can deal with.
Mhm. Yep.
Oh, well. So we will get Jane right now. This is where you've been hearing Jane from, is my phone.
Yes.
she's been on the
It
phone.
worked.
Yes, but we want to get her so that her Zoom connection works so we can see her face.
We did have her online with us for a few minutes on Sunday.
You will learn. We can teach an old dog new tricks. So we're going to get off now. Thank you for joining us. And
Okay, take care.
it was kind of weird watching Evie drive around while listening.
But she did it.
She did it. She carefully, just had it so that she could listen without, and keep driving. And why not? You listen to the radio in the car.
Right.
So,
Good good seeing you guys.
May you all stay
Okay.
safe.
yeah, and don't forget that when it comes to changing times, changing worlds, we're going to have two, well, not tracks, but two options. One is purely for social interaction, and one is going to be where we have the classes and the panels. So,
Yeah, I gotta send in something.
so anyway, yeah, you can't send anything in until we have we fix the proposal form.
Okay.
Orion
Yeah,
Orion Foxwood has said he'll be happy to join us, and but he has to he too has to wait.
Bye.
Got that.
Okay, so good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay.